Shalom everyone, and thank you for joining me in the study of Parashat Vayelech. We'll talk about a song of judgment and compassion. And what do I mean by that? Especially the time that now we are reading this parsha between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. On Rosh Hashanah it was a day of judgment. Yom Kippur that we are gearing up to is the day of atonement, asking for forgiveness. This parsha and the verse that we're going to discuss I think has tremendous significance to the time that we are in, the time that we are at. ועתה כתבו לכם את השירה הזאת. Hashem says to Moshe, and now write this song. ולמדה את בני ישראל. And you should teach it to Am Israel, to the people of Israel. שימה בפיהם, place it in their mouth. למען תהיה השירה הזאת לעד בבני ישראל. So this song will be like a testimony or a witness. Bivnei Israel. So the word Bivnei Israel is a bit flexible. It can be a witness against them, in favor of them, for them, within them. So the English translation can vary. But when we look at this verse, we obviously need to ask ourselves a few questions. What do we mean when we say this song? What song? The real song is next week's Parsha. What song are we talking about? Second question is, why here there is like a special commandment that you need to teach it to Am Israel? Every other commandment you need to teach to the nation of Israel. So what is the importance, the significance, the emphasis that you need to teach it to Am Israel? And the third one is, what does it mean, sima b'fihem, place it in their mouth, like it's like almost like prepared food that you need to put it in their mouth so they will be so used to it, they will know it. And then, the purpose of this commandment is what? That this song will be like a witness or a testimony for Am Israel. So we will try to analyze a few different interpretations. We will not be able to answer all the questions that we ask. So it's something for us to continue to learn and to study. But let's start with the Rambam, with Maimonides. Maimonides looked at the Torah and obviously has his own interpretations, but he also tried to codify it as a law. And in his book, Sefer HaMitzvot, the book of the Mitzvot, he says the following. והמצווה הי"ח, and the 18th commandment is, שציוונו שיהיה לכל איש ממנו ספר תורה לעצמו. The Torah commands us that each one of us will have his own ספר תורה. ואם כתבו בידו, הוא משובח מאוד, והוא יותר טוב. כמו שאמרו, כתבו בידו, מעלה עליו הכתוב, כאילו קיבלה מהר סיני. And the best ideal way to fulfill this commandment is that you and me will write our own Sefer Torah by ourselves, which means we need to learn how to be a scribe and to write a Sefer Torah. ואם אי אפשר לו לכותבו, and if you cannot, you are not that talented, or you are not interested in learning how to be a scribe, צריך שיקנהו, so you need to buy your own Sefer Torah, או יזכור מי שיכתבהו לו, or you should hire someone that will write it for you. Where is the source for what the Rambam says? Says the Rambam, והוא אומרו יתעלה, כתבו לכם את השירה הזאת, that you need to write that song. Now, let's pause here for a second. This is really surprising. If I would ask you, give me names to the Sefer Torah, what would you say? You would say maybe, tablets, Luchot HaEven, like what we received on Mount Sinai. Maybe you will tell me Book of Laws. Maybe you will tell me Book of Laws and Stories. I don't think that too many people will tell me, we can name the Torah a song. Why would you call the Torah a song? Says the Rambam, כי אין מותר לכתוב את התורה פרשיות, כי אמנם רצה באומרו את השירה, כל התורה הכוללת זאת השירה. The Rambam understood exactly what we are asking, and he says, wait. This week we read Parashat Vayelech. Next Shabbat, we will read Parashat Ha'azinu. In Parashat Ha'azinu, there is a song. That is basically comprised by some harsh statements against the Jewish people, but also some verses that definitely shows God's compassion towards us. God says to Moshe, in this Parsha, that he needs to write the Torah. But the Torah is not completed yet until we have this song next week. So in a way, the Rambam says you need to read the verse in the following way. Ve'ata, and now, kitvu lachem, write for yourself, gam et hashira azot. Also, that song that I will teach you next week. Include it in the Torah. Why? Because you would think that maybe I can write, some now and some later. So the Torah says no. A. B. You would think that perhaps that song is not part of the Torah. Maybe it's just like a different entity. And therefore, the Rambam says, no, don't think like that. The song is its own entity, but it's linked, it's connected, it's attached to what? To the book that we call Sefer Torah. And together, you call it a song. This is the structure of this Rambam, but we need to explain a bit. Why would you call it a song? And why would you think, and what exactly it's the functionality, I'll call it, of the song that we're going to read next week in regarding to the Torah. So Rabbi Shimshon Raphael here says, נאמר כאן שתכלית כתיבת השירה היא למען תהיה לי השירה הזאת לעד בבני ישראל. He says that the purpose of the song, that's according to the verse, is that this song will be for me as a witness, says God. And in Masechet Nedarim, and he brings the Babylonian Talmud in Tractate Nedarim on page 38a, that says that from here we learn שמצוות כתבו לכם את השירה הזאת איננה דנה רק בעצם השירה, where it says that now you should write that song, does not mean the song of האזינו, but rather אלא היא מורה לכתוב את כל התורה כולה שהשירה חותמת את דבריה. But rather it's come to teach you that the song that next week Parsha we're going to read, that's basically the signature and the sign and the seal of the entire Torah. And why is that? So Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch gives us the explanation. השירה רק מביאה לידי התודעה הכללית, שמילוי התפקיד שניתן לנו מאת השם, קובע את גורלנו לטוב ולמוטב. He says really the song, the purpose of the song, is just to enhance our general mindset that fulfilling our purpose will determine our fate for good, or God forbid, not so good. אולם עצם התפקיד הזה נלמד רק על ידי ידיעת כל התורה כולה. To know who you are and what is expected of you, that's only when you learn the Torah. How is that going to affect your fate and your future? That's the song. So in a way, Rabbi Shimshon Raphael here explains us two things here. A, why is that song is in a way a separate entity? Answer, because it's for you to understand that your actions has consequences. The way you behave will influence and will determine to some extent your future. But a more fundamental question of who am I? What am I supposed to do? What is God's expectations of me? That you can know only if you learn the Torah. So now we understand that the song is part of the Torah, what we're going to read next week, and in a way it's an additional layer to what we already know. ואכן האמור כאן ביחס לשירה האמור בפסוק כ"ו על כל ספר התורה, לקוח את ספר התורה הזה והיה שם בחלל. The entire Torah is a witness to what we should do, and also a witness to what happened when we don't do that. Rashi adds another layer, and he says, את השירה הזאת, what does it mean, this song? האזינו השמיים עד וכיפר אדמתו עמו. Rashi says, it starts with האזינו, the first verse of next week's parsha, until and God will atone for his land and for his people. I think there is a tremendous insight in Rashi's explanation. Because when you look at Rashi, you ask yourself, why do I need Rashi's explanation to tell me what is Shirat HaAzinu? I'll open up the book, I will see Azinu until the end. Rashi says, no. It's until God will atone for its land and for its people. You know, We are now between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. 2 weeks ago, we read Parashat Kitavo, where Parashat Kitavo emphasized the rebuke and the curses that, God forbid, will happen when the Jewish people deviate. So after a very, very harsh parsha, which in a way leaves some kind of a bad taste, you have the two parashot, Nitzavim and Vayelech, and then you think you are done with all those curses and with all that judgment, and then you have Azinu next week that continues on in a way to some extent with the same harsh language. And sometimes you can think and you look at Jewish history and you say to yourself, what's going on here? Like, what kind of relationship we have with God? And Rashi says, continue to read until and God will atone for its land and for its people. Don't think that you are abandoned by God. Don't think that God does not care about you. Exactly the opposite. At the end, He will atone for the land and for the people. See the connection between the land and the people. And God will atone for both. So in a way, there is very comforting, very, I would say, even embracing idea in Rashi's explanation that basically says to you, when you take the Torah and you put the song and you put it together, and you have this experience from 2 weeks ago, and now you have this experience of, again, harsh statements, you need to know that to some extent it depends on you, that we can bring it to V'chiper admato amo, and I will atone for its land and for its people. Rashi's grandson, the Rashbam, says, Parashat Ha'azinu שמעידה עליהם פורענות לכשיעברו על המצוות. He says, this song will be a witness to them that when they violate the mitzvot, the commandments, and they are being punished, יבינו כי בחטאותם לקו. They should understand that they are punished because of their sins. Now, we need to digress here for a second, and we need to understand it. Some people might understand this Rashbam, or, the Jewish people commit a sin, that's why they are punished, and now they will come up with, because of that sin they are punished like that. We are not in that business. I would like to suggest that the Rashbam does not say that, he says something different. He says when there is punishment in the world, when there is punishment against the individual, a family, a community, a nation, the world, you need to understand that God is not vengeful. God is not doing that for fun. God is sending a message. Even the best of us, even the most righteous person, has at least one thing to correct, one thing to rectify, one thing to be better at. We all can be a little bit more generous, a bit more compassionate, being a little bit more mindful. We all have something to fix. That's the beauty in who we are. That's always the move towards a better me. And therefore, the Rashbam says, when you look at all the calamities that are being described in Parashat Kitavo and in Parashat Ha'azinu, in the two parashot that I spoke about with the harsh judgment, you need to know that God expects you to do something about it. Yes, there is definitely going to be punishment for what you do. But you don't know exactly why that would happen to you. So search. Do some soul searching. Try to change more than one thing in your life. So says Rashbam, this is a testimony for you to remember that you need to understand, that you need to internalize, that you need to look deeper into your own life in order to understand that song. So that's what the Rashbam says. The Ramban, in a way, points out an idea that we will be maybe a little bit surprised, and the Ramban says why it's called Shira. If that song has judgment and harsh statements against us, so why is it called Shira? Because he says, כי יאמרו תמיד בשיר ובזמרה, וכן נכתבה כשירה, כי השירים יכתבו בהם הפסק במקומות הנעימה. Now this is something very interesting. It says, the structure of Ha'azinu that we will read next week is like a Shira, it's like a song, meaning with different columns and spaces. And also, you should sing it. Sing a song of judgment? How exactly are we going to do that? So says the Sfat Emet, And this Sfat Emet is very insightful but very challenging, and we're going to dwell on it for a few minutes. The Sfat Emet says, Inyan shira zu agam ki yesh ba onashin. He says it's called a song while it has some very harsh statement and judgment. Ach kmo שנאמר, it says that's what David HaMelech, King David, says in Psalms. Chesed u'mishpat ashira. I will sing for kindness and judgment. כמו שאמרו במדרשים, בהשם מעלל דבר, באלוקים מעלל דבר. בהשם, which is the attribute of mercy, I will sing, and באלוקים מעלל דבר, and when the attribute of judgment, אלוקים, I will also sing. כי כל המשפטים לבני ישראל הם לטובה, because all the judgments for עם ישראל, it's for good. Now let's stop. If we just read it like that, it's irritating. It can bring us to some kind of even of anger. Because if you just read it like that, you would think that the Sfat Emet says to you that everything that happens, even if it's very harsh and it's terrible, and it's a calamity, and it's destructive, it's good, it's for good. You need to believe that everything is for good. I would like to suggest that the Sfat Emet suggests to us something much deeper than that. Chesed u'mishpat ashir. We know every day we say Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Listen, O Israel, Hashem is our God, Hashem is one. We use the two descriptions to God. Hashem, attribute of mercy, and Elokim, Elokeinu, attribute of judgment. And we say that this is one God, one entity. What does that mean? So, let's describe a situation. Someone goes into the hospital, and he looks at one of the rooms, and he sees that there are 5 people, 5 doctors, are operating on a person that is on the bed. And each one of them use a knife and suction and all of that. That guy that has no clue what's flying with that person, he looks at that and says, well, what are they doing to him? Why are they cutting him open? But after a while, that person understood that those doctors that did all sorts of things on that patient saved his life. At that moment, he was correct. What they did to that person was not pleasant. But he was missing, that person was missing the long-term view and the most crucial question of why is he there? What's the purpose of him being there? The Sfat Emet suggests that in judgment, when a person, when a kehillah, when a community, when a nation goes through judgment, a time that they perceive as judgment, and not only perceive, they feel it, there's also kindness. Not that it's good for you, that God forbid to lose someone. It's not good for you to see people who you care and they are dear and near to your heart suffer. There's nothing good in it. But if we believe that God is one, says Sfat Emet, you can see the hand of kindness and compassion even at time of judgment. Even if you don't see it now, you know it exists because God is one. This is a challenging message of the Sfat Emet. But we need to read it very carefully because it does not mean that if someone, God forbid, sits Shiva today, he needs to be happy because it's good for me. No, it's not good for you. And when you come to visit a Shiva house, you don't need to tell, God forbid, the mourner, oh, it's good for you. No, definitely not. You should show empathy, you should help, you should always be there for him even after the Shiva. But you also need to try to help him or her to find chesed, to find this kindness, even in the most dark times. Something to think about. Rashi interprets that verse, chesed u'mishpat ashira, I will sing for kindness and judgment. He says, כשאתה עושה עמי חסד אקלסך ברוך הטוב והמיטיב. When you do kindness with me, I will sing for you. God who is good and bestow goodness. וכשאתה עושה במשפט, and when you deal with me harshly, with judgment, אשיר ברוך דיין האמת, I will sing God is the God of truth. בין כך ובין כך לך השם הזמרה. Whatever will happen to me, says King David, I will continue to sing to you. I think there is an interesting layer of understanding according to Rashi. Rashi suggests that at the end of the day, whatever will happen to me, it will not change my faith. Lecha Hashem azamera. I'm going to sing for you, God. I'm not going to deviate. You know, life are filled with ups and downs, successes, challenges, failures. And faith is being tested all the time, even when things are going well. And we all know that in life, it's barely that we can find one time that it was always all good, or God forbid, all bad. There is always kindness intertwined with judgment. Judgment is intertwined with kindness. And it's in a way comes, not in a way, but it really comes from one entity, God, who can be comprised or can maintain, contain conflicting attributes that are at least conflicting in our eyes. The Sfat Emet continues, and it takes it to our time, our era between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and it says, לכן בראש השנה שהוא המשפט, the day of Rosh Hashanah, that is a day of judgment that we just had a few days ago. כתוב יום תרועה יהיה לכם. We blow the shofar, it's called Yom Teruah. What is Teruah? Says the Sfat Emet, Teruah היא רצון, will, God's will. ולכן כתיב לכם, לכם היא לרצון ולא לאחרים. It's for you. Why? כי במדרש כתוב, on the verse, כי מי גוי גדול אשר לא אלוקים קרובים אליו, כהשם אלוקינו בכל קוראינו אליו. It says, who is this great nation like us, Am Israel, the people of Israel, that we are close to whom? To Elokim. Elokim? This is the attribute of judgment. Yes. When you are being judged, it's harsh. Sometimes you can get punishment. You can get punished. But the fact that we are being judged means that God cares about us, that God supervises us, that God evaluates what we do and what we don't. It means that our actions have significance. It means that what we do can impact and influence the future of us, our lives, and the future of others. And it also means that even if we are being punished, we have an opportunity to fix it. We have an opportunity to rectify it. We have an opportunity to make ourselves a better version of ourselves. This is not something that we need to take lightly. Rosh Hashanah was an incredible opportunity for us to take the feelings that we had at that day of judgment and to channel it into something productive, into something positive. Because we are the nation of God, and when we are being judged, we look at it not only as judgment by itself, because we always see judgment comes together with kindness. And in a way, the Torah says it in one verse. Hatzur tamim po'alo, God's behavior is wholesomeness. It's like a rock. It's something strong, stable. Kichol drachav mishpat. All his pathways are just. El emunah ve'en avel is a God of faith, and there is no injustice. Tzadik v'yasharu. He is upright and he is just. Even when we think that God's behavior to us is not fair, it's not just. If you look after you experience the pain, but if you look, you will also see kindness. And Rabbi Shimshon Raphael here says that the idea of tzur, rock, Hashem is being named the rock in reference to Am Yisrael. This expression, says Rabbi Shimshon Raphael here, שהרי כינוי זה מבטא את הוודאות הכפולה. It's basically clarify and express this double certainty. The first is, ישראל מוצא בהשם את המשען הנצחי של קיומו ההיסטורי. Am Yisrael finds in God the rock of his historical existence. השם רוצה שישראל יהיה. ומשום כך לא יאבד ישראל לעולם. Hashem wants us to exist, and therefore, Am Yisrael will be here forever. However, השם רוצה גם בסוג מסוים של הוויית ישראל. השם wants us to behave in a certain way. שהוא גילה לנו בתורתו, that he uncovered in his Torah, that he revealed to us in his Torah. לעולם לא יוכל ישראל להפקיע את עצמו מהדרישות האלה. We will not be able to just throw away those conditions and throw away those expectations. אין הם ניתנות לשינוי, they are unchangeable. כדרך שמציאות השם ורצונו אינם ניתנים לשינוי. Like God's will, you can't change it. כל תהפוכות הגורל שיעברו עם ישראל, everything that we as עם ישראל, as the people of Israel went through our Jewish history, מטרת כולן איננה אלא הגשמת הייעוד הזה שהשם הועיד לישראל. Everything we went through, it's to push us, embrace us, encourage us, stimulate us, bring us closer to our destiny, which is ישור בה את התגלות הנהגת השם כלפי ישראל ובאמצעות ישראל. So we can sing that song of testimony. We are God's witnesses. We need to bring God's word, God's expectations, God's values, everywhere we go. To be all agreeing, to be light unto the nations. And therefore God is the rock. We know that He exists forever, and we know we exist forever. And then we also know that God has expectations. So until now, in a way we describe that there is Sefer Torah, there is the book of Torah, there is the song. The song is to illustrate what will happen if, God forbid, we deviate. The song teaches us about the Sefer Torah itself, which means it basically can shape our future, but in order to shape your future, you need to know who you are. And for that you need the Torah. You would think that song might be a separate entity and should not be included in the Torah. It comes to teach you that everything is like Torah. Rav Soloveitchik has a different perspective on it, and he says the following. These verses speak of a double fulfillment. The phrase placed it into their mouth implies a simple reading of the text itself, a very superficial reading. The phrase, "the song will be for me as a witness," connotes teaching it to the Jewish people so they understand it well. So he basically says there are two things here. There is one that place it in their mouth, which means let them just repeat it. If you repeat the same verse 20 times, you don't understand it better, mostly. You just know it by heart. So it's something very simple. But then it says what? That it will be a witness, so they will understand it. Understanding obviously required something a little deeper than that. It is impossible to conceive of the Shirah as a witness if our relationship to it is only a mechanical. Which means if it's just reading the text, it's hard to say that we will be attached to it. You need to understand something. If you would like to be attached to something, you need to understand it. We all know that. More you understand, more you become attached to it. If we do not understand it properly, how can it serve as a witness? Only analysis and comprehension can render the Shirah an effective witness. So basically, Rav Soloveitchik points out that the tension, it's not mutually exclusive, but there is a tension between the two parts of the verse. Of one hand, you say, just place it in their mouth. On the other hand, you tell them that they need to understand it. So he says a cursory reading of the text relates only to the written law and has nothing to do with the oral Torah, with the oral law at all. However, the mitzvah of the Shirah becoming a witness by means of deep understanding merges the written law with the oral law. This merging is the ideal situation, which means, says Rav Soloveitchik, like many times when you use tension, you need to intertwine them together, you need to integrate them. Yes, there is one level, the superficiality of the text, and then the second level is the deeper meaning, which we use oral Torah. But even a superficial reading can be enough to elevate the soul. Merely reading a sacred text can purify and sanctify one's character and personality. Says Rav Soloveitchik, with all due respect and with all the encouragement that Rav Soloveitchik always had for learning, for deep learning, he says even reading the text the way you read it can connect you to God's will. So there is Shirah, which might be something a little bit more superficial, Then you have the Sefer Torah, that it's something definitely with much more understanding and much more efforts that you need to put in order to understand it. Merge them together. I would like to suggest also, based on Rav Soloveitchik, is that perhaps when now at the end of Moshe's life, this is the last parashot of Moshe Rabbeinu before his death, he wants to convey a message. The Torah is for everyone, for the superficial reader to the most Torah scholar, for the person who is not that sophisticated to the most sophisticated person. There are layers and layers and layers. The Torah is a shirah, a song, which mostly express feelings, emotions, and it's also a book, a sefer, a book of laws, something very rigid. In our religious life, we need to have both. There are laws, there are regulations, there is a framework, but in that framework, we also need to have expression of our feelings, emotions. It's not only cognitive, it's also emotional. It's also feelings that we need to try to merge together. So now, if we go back to the pasuk we began with, ועתה, and now, כתבו לכם את השירה הזאת. ולמדה את בני ישראל שימה בפיהם. And now you should write this shirah, teach it to the Jewish people, place it in their mouth. למען תהיה השירה הזאת לי לעד בבני ישראל. So this song will be a witness or a testimony for Am Yisrael. I think we can look at that pasuk and really say to ourselves, now it's our time to write this Torah for us, to look at ourselves and to ask ourselves, what is better time between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur to ask ourselves probably the $1 million question. What do we believe in? What's our identity? What's my purpose here in life? How much I would like to be engaged with Torah learning? How much do I want to be engaged with Am Yisrael, the people of Israel, with the state of Israel, with Jews? What are my goals? How deep do I want to immerse in Torah? To take these two elements, the book and the song, and to bring them together. That's one of our challenges. Thank you.